Schwimmer Dow Na.
What the?
Schwimmer Dow Na.
David Schwimmer.
And now say it a little faster with me. Schwimmer Dow Na.
I thought it was simmer down. Simmer down now.
Simmer down na. Simmer down na.
Man.
I think the crack's been
it's a
an
deep cut for
expensive.
SNL of
Yeah.
telling people to calm the hell down.
We've all been sniffing the vanilla vaginas.
It smells like clean.
Whoa, a little premature.
Welcome back to Come and Brew It Radio, coming to you from Texas Brewing Inc. in Haltom City, Texas. You can find us on the web at txbrewing.com and be sure to follow us on Facebook and share with all your friends. In this episode, we're going to go over 3 versions of one of our favorite styles, the Pilsner. The 2015 BJCP guidelines have reorganized the previous descriptions, but there are generally 3 variations, including German, Czech, and American. Yet the core of each is that it's easy to drink, crisp, refreshing, light lager character, backed up with nice hoppiness. We'll try a few and discuss the differences and considerations for brewing them.
Before we get started, please be sure to check out our Patreon account to help support the show. Every little bit counts, and if you visit patreon.com/comeandbrewItRadio, we have a variety of options for you to help keep the show going, get involved, and improve it. Plus, starting soon, we'll do a regular Patreon-only kit or swag giveaway with each show. At the end of each month, we'll be doing a monthly product giveaway for all our $5, $10, and $20 patrons.
Yeah, full show.
So, I'm Chris.
I'm Nigel.
I'm Jeremy.
I'm Brandon.
I'm Stubby.
And
We got a producers. Coming
All right.
So we have one of our I guess fabled employees tonight. Welcome, Jeremy.
Fable.
Thank you.
Fabled.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean he's like this
Enigma.
He's like enigma. He makes all these great beers, and we never really talk about all the great stuff he does. So we brought him in
We
tonight.
see him Sundays.
Yeah.
That's true. That's true.
Yeah. So anyway, he's going to help us with our episode tonight with the.
Discussion
doing?
on Pilsners.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
We're talking about Pilsners. Yeah. That's
Come on,
right.
Stubby, get with it.
I think we better warn
Shit.
everybody up front that the horrible, corny joke train is
Corny.
going
joke.
full speed right now.
Full speed, yeah.
We're looking to hear a lot of really bad jokes,
Yes.
and
Yes.
apparently a lot of noise in the background as
Yes.
well.
Yeah. I do that on purpose.
Oh, I know. That's why you got the trained professional here that does not flinch.
Well, so let me give you a little background. So, in our industry, it's kind of tough because you drink a lot of beer, right?
Yes,
And
I do.
So, the last 2 times, or 2 times ago, I got some bad blood work back, from the doctor when I went, and
those liver enzymes.
yeah, we're a little elevated, So the next 2 times, I was like, well, I'm just not going to drink the week I go to the. It's really dumb, though, if you think about it.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'm studying for
You're just
a blood.
lying to the
I'm
doctor, yeah.
studying for a blood test, right? So anyhow, long story short, I haven't had a single beer all week until today, and I just made up for it.
Now you're going to make up for the week.
Yeah. Now, when we were still doing this on Thursdays, I scheduled my 6-month checkup with all my blood work for a Friday morning one time.
My God!
And boy, let me tell you, those results did not come back good.
Did we eat fried chicken that night?
Oh, you have high triglycerides, high cholesterol.
And you appear to still be drunk.
Well, the cholesterol is not affected by the beer, but triglycerides and your liver enzymes for sure. So, at any rate,
and what is this alcohol? I don't get it. It's like really messing up everything.
But I thought a beer a day kept the doctor away.
yeah, a beer a day, yeah,
Right.
uh-huh.
Not
Or
15.
gallon.
Not a week's
Yes.
worth of beer every night.
Yeah, so I actually looked that up this week. I was like, what is that? What is the average American male drink a beer or my age a week? And it's like 5 beers or 8 beers a week.
Here's the problem.
And you were
Friday.
quite
Yeah.
proud that you
Those
knocked that out of the
those
water.
statistics
one night.
rely on honest feedback from people.
Yeah.
because they ask people, and that's the thing. It's just like that NHC survey that or the AHA survey that they did. How many people don't drink craft beer every night? And it was like more than half. I'm like, yeah, right.
It's kind of like how many times do you whack off a week?
I mean, they do the same survey in the military, and it's.
I don't want to do any math. Can we do it a day?
if you, the military survey was always.
Nobody's living up to that shit.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Spit it out, Junior.
Forgot the joke.
Let's move
Not like
swiftly
mouthful
on.
this time.
Oh wow!
You fucked this up so bad.
Wow. See, this is what I was talking about. I knew this was coming.
Epic fail.
You said it.
To set that up, you would have gone, what is
I'm not the one who said
Facebook
that.
and
you said it's
Spider-Man
coming.
have-
Oh, yeah.
Maybe. They're both web-based. I don't know.
So,
Yeah.
so welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Yeah. Thank you.
Nice family show.
So let's get to our recent happenings because we have a couple of cool
It's
ones
almost-
to talk about tonight. The first one has to do with some
Butt chugging. No,
That's-
I'm kidding.
that's not recent.
that was our first episode. But anyway, go ahead.
So the first one has to do with some Friars in Maine who are closing their bakery and opening up a brew pub instead. And I thought this was a cool, interesting,
Friar like
like
Tuck?
Catholic priests, yeah,
Okay.
Monks.
and I guess the basically the designation is that they've taken a vow of poverty and to helping people, and so they owned this bakery in Maine, and they got tired of commuting to where the bakery was and decided to open up a brew pub in their hometown. And I thought it was really cool, especially in contrast to the story that we had recently with Father Jeff having to stop brewing because the bishop told him to. And my immediate thought when that happened was,
well, why is that allowed, and why does?
Kind of brewing and Catholic priests and friars and that kind of thing go hand in hand.
Well, they've been doing it for
monasteries.
millennium.
Right.
Is it
Make
like
some of the best beers in the world. So I thought this was a cool counterpoint to that, where these guys are getting to open up a brew pub in their hometown, and I just thought it was really cool.
Yeah, well, and and that's one of the things that really drove me crazy about the whole Father Jeff thing. Is I was like, if there's anything that's going to bring people to become part of a congregation or to become part of a church group, is, hey man, I come to this beer, man. I mean, I get to come to the church service and then have a couple pints afterwards, and has social. I mean, I think that's the biggest problem with our society today is people don't know how to socialize anymore, and I think that is one of the many reasons
They mistake social media for socializing.
Well, yeah,
actually.
but I'm just saying that I think that there's so many reasons that may be one of the big reasons that this craft beer or the brew pub phenomenon is exploded, because people are just like craving this, for our whole existence as human beings.
That's a really good point. Recently, I was at Pedernales in Dallas with some friends, and we were in there for a while having beers and talking. And then I looked around and I said, you know what? If you look around this place, you'll notice there is nobody staring at their cell phone.
Right.
Everybody in here is playing a game or talking. They're socializing somehow. There
Right.
literally was not a single person staring down at their cell phone. And I thought that was really cool.
So that's almost like that reminds me of the pub scene back in England, back before
Right.
cell phones and stuff. Because
Right.
that was exactly what the pub is.
right.
Well, and I think that's the point I was getting at is that and I think that's a perfect example is the pubs in England is more of a social.
It's a meeting place.
It's a meeting place,
Yeah.
and I think because we are in a weird aspect because we're in the Metroplex, we're really spread out with them people, and we don't really have the corner bars or the corner.
Yeah, you're
Right,
right.
yeah.
You're right.
Where
Yeah.
like if you go to up to Chicago or New York, everybody goes to kind of like their corner bars, and then they live 5 or 10 stories up from there.
Right.
But I think that's one of the things that I think people really miss, and I think that's one of the things that's a big hit with the brew pub thing, because you can bring your kids.
Right.
And a lot of like brew pubs and breweries are now like having like little kid areas where they can, they have swing sets.
Yeah, they're all
like
pretty family friendly. I really like that because I've got a young kid, and it's easy for me to go out and hang out with some friends. And your kid's not going to be sitting there bored, and they're also not going to be around a bunch of rowdy drunk people. People generally behave themselves pretty well.
Oh yeah, I agree. I agree.
And I think that's an important thing for the craft beer scene too, is to have these environments where people go and they enjoy some beer and they're not getting completely hammered and driving and it's more of a toned down. It's like, look, this is really what this is about. It's not to say that we don't get hammered. Sometimes we do,
just on the podcast,
right? Yeah, that's what podcasts are for, right? Yeah. Everybody who gets hammered has a podcast, so
maybe the Friars need to make a trade for Father Jeff. Give it some like a six round pick, something like that.
No doubt.
Trade for Father Jeff.
But I back to my original point though is that I just can't imagine why anybody would restrict. Especially like a Catholic priest, that they don't have a problem. Catholics don't have a problem with drinking for the most part.
Absolutely not.
Would restrict them from making alcohol. I just don't get it.
Right.
Other than the only thing I can figure out that after looking at it, and the only thing I can think of is you're supposed to be like, not. I mean, the only thing I can think of is you're not supposed to be. I don't know how to explain it.
I think it might be more. I think it might be more down to the time.
Down to earth.
Away from
you're not supposed to have some notoriety.
I think it's more down to the time taken away from his regular life.
Well, with the Father, speaking specifically about the Father Jeff thing, I've talked to a lot of people that know him and that kind of thing, and this bishop is not liked at all by any of the congregation. This isn't the only thing he's done to upset them, and this is just kind of typical of him.
So he's more of a power play on the upper management.
Yeah. It's like a bad manager.
Global thing.
Yeah,
gotcha.
Right.
Okay.
So,
well, anyway,
I thought that was a cool story. I thought it was interesting.
Cool story.
And
cool story.
But and I think that they actually have a abbey now here in the United States. Was it Spencer?
Yeah, it's in Massachusetts,
Spencer?
I think.
Is it Spencer? Is it called Spencer? I think
you're right.
Spencer.
Yeah, I think you're right.
But it's actually
actually a Trappist brewery.
Trappist brewery. I've never had any of their beers, but I know there's another monastery in like New Mexico that makes beer, but they're not a Trappist.
Yeah, there's some certain requirements that have to be met for it to be called Trappist.
Yeah.
That this was the only new one that had come about in hundreds of years.
Well, and there's a bunch of them now. I would say a bunch, but there's a lot. There's one in Italy now. There's one in Germany.
Really?
There's a few others. But
I had always heard there was only like 9 Trappist breweries.
That was originally.
Yeah.
I think there's 12 or 13 now.
Is there?
I don't know. I'll have to look that up, but I know there's more now. But I think that's a cool thing. But I think rather than I can only think that would only encourage people to come to a congregation rather than discourage them from coming to church.
Absolutely. Yay!
Yeah. Does that mean the smoking sign has been turned off?
I thought somebody requested a stewardess.
We're now free to move about the cabin.
I'll have to worry about that.
So the second thing was Constellation Brands Brewery in Nava, Mexico, which is right near Mexicali, California, which is right on the border of California and Mexico, obviously. There's a large brewery there for Constellation Brands, which brews Modelo and now Ballast Point also and all that. And I guess that this brewery is using so much water that the town actually has a water shortage. There's not enough water for people to drink. And they're planning an expansion on the brewery, and they say that if this happens, that the town is going to be without water. Wow. What I thought was crazy about it was the way the article was written is Americans are drinking up too much beer and causing a shortage of water in this town. And I thought that's the most stupid headline I've ever seen.
These beer drinkers are such an army that the world has never seen. They literally drink the rivers dry.
There has to be very, very little water in this place to start with for that to be the problem. I remember when California was during its severe drought over the last few years, which was the worst drought in the state's history. I had heard some interviews with brewers, and they were being asked, was the drought going to affect the brewery, and were they going to be able to carry on? And they said that actually, even though California had, I think it was 600 breweries at the time, that all of the breweries combined used about the same amount of water as a 125-acre almond farm. 125 acres of almond farming. That actually 90% of the water that was used in California was for agriculture, and only 10% was municipal. So, when you talk about one brewery using up all the water for a town, that makes me think they just didn't have much water to start with.
Or the person who wrote the article didn't know how much water was actually being used, and they were an anti-beer person.
Well,
because I've definitely seen plenty of articles where people take an idea and write it, and it makes it past the editors because the editors don't really care. I've seen that on local news stations plenty of times about.
Well, this is actually the town, like the city council in this town, speaking up, saying, "Hey, if this happens, we're not going to have any water." That's what prompted the article. Who knows? There could be some,
I guess,
factual inaccuracy there possibly. It doesn't mean that it's necessarily true, but
I know that Moonlight Meadery. He spoke at the last Bluebonnet. He had his neighborhood council had similar issues with him starting up his commercial.
Well, he started a commercial meadery in his house.
Yeah, but everyone came up and they had a lot of issues with him taking up too many resources for the community.
Well, they were actually objecting to what was he going to do with all his used grain.
Yeah.
From making mead. So you're right. Yeah, there's a level of lack of understanding. Yes. That's a good point. That's a good example. Yeah.
I get one of those once a week.
So I don't know. It's
Jeremy's Pills.
Oh, okay, great.
Oh, we've got Jeremy's Pilsner going around. Cool. My glass is just about empty.
So is Jeremy's.
So you drink faster and talk less. Is that what you're saying?
So this last one, I don't know anything about. It's the first time I'm seeing it.
Well, and man, I wish Cedric was here because he has a little more insight to this. But what I didn't realize is this guy is coming in and he is buying up lots of breweries. It's not just this group. And what was the group? Man, I can't remember the name of this group, but
Artisanal Imports.
I don't think that's the name of it. It's called
That's what
something
it says
else.
right here on this.
Yeah.
7 months after acquiring Texas-based Uncle Billy's Brewery, Artisanal Imports co-founder and CEO Bob Leggett has purchased the Pedernales Brewing Company brands. Financial terms of the deal, which closed at the start of the year, were not disclosed. The transaction did not include Pedernales Fredericksburg Brewery, which former Pedernales owner Lee Herford said is in the process of being sold to a yet-to-be-named buyer. So they just bought the brand. They didn't buy the brewery.
which we had Lee Herford. He was a character.
Yeah, and you had the brothers that were the sales guys
yeah.
on. They're known for that, who was his name? Robert Earl Keen beer.
Yeah.
That's interesting to me that they bought the brand of a brewery that was going out of business.
Right.
That usually you buy a brand because it's successful, not because it's failing.
Maybe they're looking
I
to
don't know.
diversify other recipes they have.
Who knows how much he paid for it, too? It could have just been to buy one.
I know that they were putting out about 12,000 barrels a year, but so it's not like anything to bat an eye at or.
Well, yeah, but I think they were also dependent on one beer to account for most of their sales.
Yeah,
I
maybe.
think they rode that Robert Earl Keen wave as far as they could, and probably started to realize that that's a pretty
and I would
select
imagine
audience.
anybody outside of Texas could give two shits about who even the hell Robert Earl Keen even is.
Yeah, there's some of us here in Texas that feel that same way.
Yeah, I'm not gonna lie, I don't know who that is.
I'm uncomfortable with the encouragement in some of these cases. That
I felt like I was really getting ready to vomit on an airplane.
The captain has put on the fasten seatbelt sign. Now, can the audience hear these sounds too?
Yes.
Okay.
So it says Lee Herford said it is in the process of being sold to a yet-to-be-named buyer. Pedernales brands will continue to be brewed using the original recipes by the brewery's former head brewer, John West, who has been hired by the Celis Brewery, Leggett said. He added there are no plans to...
They also own Celis. This group does.
Oh, this group does? Okay.
Yeah.
He added that there are no plans to rebrand any of Pedernales' offerings, and additionally, Leggett said he and the Celis Brewery are in the process of changing their contract brewing arrangements to an alternating proprietorship, meaning the two breweries will share the facility.
So they're going to brew Pedernales out of Celis?
Seems that way.
That's what it sounds like.
It
Yeah,
wouldn't surprise me, honestly.
Just take the two highest making.
I think what we're seeing in the industry, and I may be completely off base, but what we're seeing is people that has put in a lot of money, and they've been somewhat successful, but they can't really make the business plan work per se, and they're like, okay, well, let's just take these brands. The consumers are idiots; they're not going to know any damn difference. Let's brew them all out of one brewery, and I really think you're going to see more and more of that.
Well, traditionally over the last 5-10 years, the alternating proprietorship has been used as a way to start your brewery, not as what you take your brewery when it's not doing well and step back to that.
Well, and maybe we need some premise on that. In Texas, in order for you to be able to, there's two different ways you can do it. You can contract brew, but you actually have to mention on the can or the bottle that it's. Let's just say, for example, some brewery Brewery X is having their beer brewed at Brewery Z, right? Well, in the state of Texas, if you were to do that, you have to say, hey, this is blah, 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 Brewery Y, but it's brewed by Brewery Z. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah, and imports are the same, right? It's brewed in England, imported by XYZ.
Right.
You got to say where it's brewed at.
It would still be their beer. It would just be imported by whatever importation company, right?
Right.
But so that's I don't know if that's necessarily...
Well, alternating proprietorship is a different thing than contract brewing.
Right, exactly. So basically, if you were doing alternating proprietorship, basically what you would be doing is you both own the brewery, and then you actually have to, from what I understand, and especially like in the cases of where you're doing, in Texas, you're not able to own a distillery and a brewery at the same time. So like what they would do is they would actually end their license, relicense for brewing for a certain period of time, stop the brewery license.
How does Ranger Creek do it?
Exactly.
That's
that
how
way.
they do it?
Yeah.
Really?
So
that seems like a huge pain in the ass.
Oh, huge.
Real Ale do it too, right?
Package it and then start a new batch of something else.
Yeah. So I don't know if they're necessarily if that's still the case. It was at one time.
So if anybody's familiar with Heretic Brewing out of Northern California, that's Jamil Zainashev's brewery, that's how he got started, was an alternating proprietorship. And basically, you go into someone else's facility and brew on their brew house.
You basically rent their facility.
Yeah, or sometimes they'll actually put their own fermenters into somebody else's facility. So they share the brewing equipment, but the fermenters and bright tanks are their own and that kind of thing. And generally, that's how you get started, and you grow out of that to where you then move to your own facility. You don't open a brewery and then it doesn't do so well, and then now you go do an alternating proprietorship. To me, I see that type of thing happen in my industry, and it's usually a sign that you're on the way out. You're clutching
I would
life.
agree. And as a matter of fact, a lot of the breweries that I see that are taking on contract brewing, typically the reason being is they're in trouble.
Right.
And the only reason I say that is because if your brand is not in trouble, you would have no problems filling your tanks.
Right. It's the other way around. You end up with not enough capacity.
Not enough capacity.
If you've got way too much capacity and you're having
like,
a contract brew,
you're like, holy shit, we got to fill all this these fermenters. So I think, and that's it's really interesting. We talk a lot about this, and I mean, it's not necessarily a homebrew related topic, but I think we're all interested in these different aspects of the craft brewing industry.
I think it's important to be aware of how these things work and the way we're talking about trends in the industry now too, and because all of us sit around on our back porch drinking our beer going, man, I sure would like to do this for a living.
I'd sure like to make a brewery someday.
And the harsh reality of it kind of needs to be evident to you to keep yourself
in
check a little bit. And remember, you get to enjoy doing it as a home brewer, and there's some real world consequences to turning it into an occupation.
And you know, and this is even from my standpoint, and I really enjoy being in the beer industry generally, but it's not. I don't get to brew. I mean, I brew a lot less than I ever did before I owned the business, and you know,
well, and so many people they do get to brew all the time, but they're brewing the same 3 beers over and over and over again too.
It's not a. I like I said, I really enjoy being involved in the brewing industry because a lot of you guys don't realize is not only do we sell to homebrew, we also sell to breweries. We have a small distribution company that we sell to about 40, 50 breweries.
We literally supply every brewery in the country.
No, we don't.
And by the country, you mean
hopefully
DFW.
someday.
Stone would go out of business if it weren't for us. That's how big.
Hopefully someday we'll be there. But you know, I really like and enjoy being a part of the industry. But at the same time, I have no desire to be a brewer. I mean, actual own a brewery. No desire.
See, I still do. I still have the brew pub dream in my head that someday, and I think the brew pub is an exception to the rule.
I get that. I totally get it. I really do. I think when you get into it, a lot of people don't realize that there's a lot more to it than just brewing. It's a business.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah,
it's running a business.
I think the romance of being a head brewer. I mean, I love brewing. It gets me into my own space and my own time. I think the romance of being a brewer of a brew pub, my own brewery, is fantastic.
Oh yeah,
the hard work's gotta suck.
Well, it's not just a romance of the brewing to me. It's the idea of coming up with good recipes to go with the food. It's having food and the space and having people want to come and hang out and enjoy creations that you love.
And for me, that's the thing, is producing something that I get to watch other people enjoy would be great. All I do is talk for a living. That's all I do is I talk, and I get other people to do things. If I talk enough and somebody else does a thing that I talk to them about, that's probably a lot easier than what I do. If I talk enough and I get somebody else to do something and I've done my job right, I like the idea of doing something myself and being able to watch the results. And I just enjoy producing something.
Well, and you know, I think that's the greatest thing about my job is really I get to enjoy all aspects of brewing, whether it be on a pro or a homebrew scale. You know, and this is not to brag. It's just I know these guys, and they respect me for who I am and what I do for a living. And I feel just like I'm just as big a part of the community in the brewing community as I was if I owned a brewery. If that makes
absolutely,
sense.
Yeah.
You know, so. It's a lot. Probably more so because I'm not a competitor.
Well, and I think that can be said for a lot of homebrewers around here too. Guys like James Lalonde, who gives countless hours to the whole community of. I mean, that guy has had such an influence on so many brewers, pro and amateur around here. Same type of thing. You can make a difference, and you can be a part of the community without being a commercial brewer. So,
yeah. All right. So I think we kind of wrapped that up, but for recent happenings and that nature. But any of you guys have any cool projects that you're doing? I know Nigel, you're working on one, right?
Well, referring back to one of the Making Plans episode about long-term storage. So I put some. I mean, it was nothing major by any means. I just put some spring clips up on the wall of my garage. That
you know what?
Spring clips. Some spring-loaded clips.
I got the spring clips. It was something else you said.
Garage.
My garage. It's where I park my car.
That's where your
car.
Yeah. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
what are spring clips exactly?
Spring clips are spring-loaded clips. So.
I ricochet.
It's
shooting over
really.
here.
I think it's really difficult to explain what you're talking about without seeing a picture of
Is
it.
that
I-
those
I
clips
have
that
a-
like
I have a
bounce
photo.
back or hold
No,
into
imagine
place?
you had a spring-loaded metal clip on the wall that you could put a broomstick in,
There
and
you
it
go.
would grab onto the
Right.
broomstick.
Oh, okay.
So he's
you-
got
you
that on
stick
the
it
wall
right
to
to it and it
hold
holds
for
on to
my
things. Okay.
thief and
Gotcha.
my auto siphon and stuff like that, just so I can now hang that up there to dry. And
Okay.
You know what my
keep
immediate
moisture out.
thought was when I saw that picture you sent?
No.
I would line the inside of that with like electrical tape or something, so it
Okay,
doesn't
so it doesn't
scratch.
scratch.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good
because
point.
immediately I thought, ooh, that's going to scratch.
Yeah.
That and those scratches leave little places for bacteria to hide.
Yep, that's a good point.
You,
Thank
I could tell by the look in your eye that you thought I was going to come with some smart ass answer on that, didn't you?
Yes.
And I say eye because I can only see one eye. So
All right, so
Is it the good one or the bad one?
Jeremy,
Yeah.
I gotta ask you, Jeremy, did you? Is this the only bottle of pills you brought tonight?
No.
Good.
I got 4 others.
It's almost gone.
Because
But
we're
that's
gonna.
the only
we're-
free one.
I didn't want to really comment on it yet, but till we got to the pills part.
right. Yeah, we do need to save some for the actual pills
Wow.
discussion.
That's good.
It's
I-
it's
I've
that
got a-
bad, is it?
Last night I decided to brew, and this is something I've started doing. Is I'm brewing on weeknights now.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Because it's so easy to plan to brew on a weekend, and then you get busy and you never have a chance to do it. But it's,
Really, is it more of you like I get drunk on the weekends and I don't want to brew?
no, it's not that at all. No, it's
There-
I just
there's-
get busy
There's
doing
other
stuff.
schedules that you have to work into your own schedule on the weekends.
But my kid goes to bed at about 7:30, and my wife goes to bed at about 9. So I can get out there at 7:30 and start brewing, and be done by 11:30. And it's so much easier to fit it into my schedule. And while I was doing that, I finished up the welding on my my grain mill stand last night. So I got all
Wow.
kinds of beer
Nice.
stuff attempted
Yeah.
or accomplished.
You're actually
last night. So
welding and stuff now.
I'm a very bad welder. Very bad. Yeah.
What did you brew last night?
I did an English bitter.
Sweet.
Yeah. This time I added a little bit of chocolate malt.
Okay.
And I backed off the alcohol down below 5%, and I made sure to add corn sugar to it this time. It's going to be more of a, it's like a best bitter. Where normally I'm brewing a strong bitter.
Right.
This is more of a best bitter. I'm excited about it.
Liberty Bell.
Liberty Bell, yeah, and Challenger and EKG.
I need to get you off that Liberty Bell.
Okay, yeah, well, I'm open to.
You don't like it?
I think it's too clean for an English yeast.
Well, here's the thing: is I'm fermenting it a little bit warm.
Okay.
I'm fermenting them in my pub in my house, which is 65, 66 degrees ish.
Okay.
So during active fermentation, it's going to be in the 70 to 72
Gotcha.
degree range, and I do get some esters out of it.
I'd like you to try that Empire
So,
yeast
well,
from Mangrove Jack.
the Empire.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
okay.
really like that.
Well, I would say I would like to give a shout out to RAR.
Absolutely.
They hooked us up with a couple 6-packs of their new stuff tonight.
Throw some over here. I'll hold them up for the camera.
The
Yeah, there you go.
how do you say that? Paleta?
Paleta de mango.
There is.
Paleta de mango.
There is one.
Sounds like a dance.
Paleta de mango. It's a mango chili beer with lime. It's tasty.
Man, I
like
haven't
it a
even
lot.
tried the
Eric,
other one
can you
because
get
I
this?
like this one so much.
Yeah, this one's really good. And then also they have another one that's called Adios Pantalones.
And we'll get that one.
Yeah. Well, I'm used to drinking tequila, so you know.
Yeah, that's right. Tequila makes your clothes fall off. Right?
Yeah.
There's that one.
But and then also we have our friends over at
Turning
Point.
Yes.
Yeah.
They brought us their first batch of their New England IPA.
And I can hold that one up too, but it wouldn't do you much good.
It's kind of silver and
you
stuff.
show it off. It's a very nice looking can.
It's a nice silver looking bullet.
Yeah.
It doesn't
I mean,
taste anything like
You
this.
can't. I don't
the
think you can
silver
say
bullet,
that.
no. Yeah, I don't think you can call it the silver bullet.
Yeah, there we go. I mean, it looks really crushable.
Who gave him a new toy?
It's the wacky DJ soundboard.
And then also
Boing,
we
boing,
had
boing.
another local brewery come in this week to give us their IPFNA, which, that's great beer
Yeah.
too. Thanks to Panther Island for bringing that out too. So
You want to hold that one up too, Nigel?
I can do that.
yeah, what a great name though, man. They hit it big with that one, IPFNA.
Panther Island.
Yeah,
Oh, you got there you go.
There you
go.
go.
Yeah. All right.
Imperial IPA.
but so I just wanted to kind of hit those out because that's what we're drinking right now. We're drinking all the beers that these guys brought us this week. So cheers, guys. Thanks for bringing that out.
Yes. And, I'd like to say about the RAR stuff, too. This is one of the things I love about RAR is they're a good-sized brewery that still does a lot of one-offs and experimental stuff, and they always have something new for you to try. And I buy their regular six-packs all the time. I buy Pug and that kind of thing, and the Blonde. I really like it. The Blonde has really, really gotten good over the last few years. But then they also have something new for you to go to all the time, too. They do a great job of balancing that.
Yeah.
And so they remain one of the breweries that I buy. A good portion of the beer that I buy is RAR.
What I really like about this paleta, it's like intense mango, but then it finishes with a little bit of spice. I like that a lot.
The spice is just perfect in it, isn't it?
And you know what's cool about it is it doesn't really. The biggest thing that I have problem with on some of the, like pepper beers or anything with chilies or spices is that it builds. The more you drink, the hotter it gets.
Yeah.
I don't really feel like that does that.
Well, see, I get it with it, but it's subtle enough that when it builds, it doesn't build up to a ridiculous level.
Right,
That's the thing.
right.
They're not afraid to do something subtle.
Right.
And I like that. You don't often get that in commercial beers with additives like chilies and stuff like that.
Well,
they
and
feel
I
like
think
they have to
this-
just be in your face with it.
I
you
think
know?
this beer actually started out, if I'm not mistaken, we'll have to. I tried to get Nate Swan on tonight, but this beer actually, the mango beer actually started out as a collaboration with a beer in Mexico City, a brewery in Mexico City.
That's right, huh?
Yeah. So anyway, but anyhow,
This Adios Pantalones is pretty good too.
yeah, it is
That'd be good on a hot
very
day. for
very
sure. It's a
session.
lawnmower beer. Yeah,
lawnmower.
it's a
beer, for
cerveza
sure.
de sesión. So
Yeah.
Yeah, Decision.
de sesión.
That sounds.
No, that sounded
very
French.
Cajun,
huh?
Yeah.
So how many is it going to take for you to say goodbye to your pants?
I'll take my pants off right now. We're at zero.
I was planning on bringing in an example tonight for our Beer Works segment, but I ran out of CO2 Wednesday night. So next week I'll have my smoked beer in house.
Oh, good. So let's move on to unsolicited answers to Reddit. I mean, internet questions.
I was
So-
supposed to do bumpers today, and I got sidetracked.
Yes, we did.
Should we not be getting
I'm just gonna
seatbelt
do them
beep?
like
Can we
Have
get
the-
like prices right?
Yeah,
like
something
beep
foreboding.
sounds?
Yeah, that makes you afraid of what's about to happen. That's you're right. That's what it should be.
Like some kind of like breaking news kind of thing.
Yeah, there we go. The little ticker. So this one, the first one we've got here is titled "Yeast Flavor in Homebrew." So it says, I'm relatively new to homebrewing. I'm on about my 5th batch or so. I've had the same problem pretty much every time. I've done mostly IPAs and I'm bottling. I understand that there will be some yeast in the bottom of the bottles and that I need to avoid getting this into the glass. Just about every time, though, at least some of the bottles or some drinks from every bottle will have a yeast flavor to them. The batch I just did, you can even see it suspended in the bottles, not all settled to the bottom. I am following instructions on fermentation times for the most part, although I've been a bit impatient if the bubbling has stopped. Do I need to let it sit in the fermenter longer to let everything settle? Do I need to let it condition longer in the bottles? Should I just be more careful pouring? Is there an easy way to filter from bottle to glass? The beer tastes as intended, I feel, with the exception of the yeast, so it isn't worth throwing out. Please help.
All right.
There's a lot of guesses.
Okay.
Several
So
answers in here.
I get this one a lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Number one, 99.9% of the time, people say, I taste a yeasty flavor. They don't know what the hell they're tasting.
Right.
Yes.
I mean, I would.
They're seeing that there's some yeast in there, and they're assuming
Yeah,
that
they're
something they're
assuming
tasting
that
is from
flavor
it.
is from the yeast. Honestly, yeast has very little flavor. I would say that I would avoid it in most instances. You don't want to, if you're bottle conditioning, you don't want to pour it in there, with an exception of a few different styles, right? But
I think the flavor component, it actually dulls other flavors more than it has its own flavor.
I mean, to me, just straight up yeast has a kind of a bitter flavor.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that necessarily. It's kind of a weird bitter flavor, but I wouldn't say that most of the time people, it's yeasty. Most of the time that I hear people say that, I think that they're tasting something else. It's not a.
I think they're taking. I think they're just taking something they see and they're attributing it to whatever it is they're tasting. I just don't think
that's a big flavor component, with the exception of a wit beer or a Hefeweizen. I just don't. I mean, unless you're mixing up your
But I think it does affect the flavor, though.
It can, yes, yeah. But I think most of the time it's you got all this yeast shit in the bottom of your bottle, and then when you pour it out, you're drinking it out of a bottle conditioned bottle. It's going to have an effect on it. But I think most of the time I hear that it's yeasty or it's I got yeast or I got the yeast flavor.
And there was something that stood out to me there too. At least some of the bottles or some drinks from every bottle. So don't ever drink from the bottle of a bottle conditioned beer except for Hefeweizen or wit beer. Yeah.
I just took that to be maybe using a bomber and therefore pouring more than one glass out of it.
Well, and that's the thing. If you are, you need to pour it all at once. Yeah.
I also wonder, and you can only take it at face value, but I also wonder if when he says flavor, he's talking about the overall beer experience, including the aroma.
Well, yeah, I think you're probably right about
that.
The mouthfeel, yeah. And this guy is 5 batches into home brewing. My guess would be that he's not a very experienced beer taster.
Well, that kind of reinforces the point I was talking about earlier, is that, I think a lot of times when people, how many times have you met, relatively new homebrewers? And this is not a knock on anybody.
Nope.
We all have to develop our palates. We all have to learn how to, what flavors or what contributes to what flavors, right?
Or even just separating flavors and being able to identify.
I can't tell you how many new brewers I've run across and it's like, oh, this is way too malty. And I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And they have totally confused malt and hops. They don't know. Yeah, they don't understand the difference between malty and hoppy. They just don't know, and
they latch onto a buzzword.
It's a buzzword, and it's not to make people feel bad about themselves or make it's just they just don't know. They don't know the difference, and it's it's all a part of the learning process. It's nothing to be embarrassed about. There's been many instances over my whole journey that I've made big mistakes, or I didn't understand different flavors, or I didn't. There was a long time for me. I wouldn't touch an IPA because I thought that was the worst freaking thing on the planet.
It is.
But over the years, I've learned to appreciate it and actually embrace it. So these are all different things that you have to think about when especially. I'll never forget this. The first batch of beer I ever made was a California Common, and I don't understand why that was a particularly common first beer for people, because it's not an easy bear to make,
because it was one of the few craft
beers.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe that was the case. Anchor, that was kind of their flagship for a long time, was Anchor Steam, and that was one of the first beers I made in the early 90s. And I'll never forget this because I thought there was something dramatically wrong with it. And when I took it in the homebrew store, I was like, man, this just doesn't taste right. There's something's jacked up, right? And you know what the guy told me? He goes, well, if you don't like it, you can bring it all to me because I'll drink it.
Yeah.
So that told me right there that he was like, holy crap, this is drinkable. This is very within the style specific. I like this beer. I will drink it, I didn't particularly like it, and I think the reason being is because I wasn't experienced enough or had a palate enough to understand the particular style that I was brewing. And that happens a lot. We've had a lot of people come in and go, man, I brewed your Saison kit, or it's funky, or something's fucked up with it, or it's jacked up.
Yeah.
And then we drink it and I'm like, man, it's freaking good.
This is what it tastes like.
This is what it's supposed to taste like. Then they're like, really? I thought something was. I thought it was infected. But that's.
It's just part of the learning curve. Is all it is. The other thing that stood out to me here too, and this again part of the learning curve, was let's see here. I am following the instructions on fermentation times for the most part, although I've been a bit impatient if the bubbling has stopped. And what that stands out to me are the instructions on a lot of kits that say leave it in the primary for 7 days, then move it to the secondary for 7 days, and then bottle it. And it gives this absolute number.
Right.
And so people, they read the instructions and they follow the instructions, which makes sense.
It's not just that. It's the impatience. I've seen it time and again on two different groups that I follow on Facebook. One's beer makers and other one's mead makers. And it's people get impatient because it stops bubbling.
Right.
And they're like, oh, God, I've either done something wrong or there's something wrong. And
the bubbling thing drives me nuts. It really does.
Well, and here's the reinforcement for that, too, Brandon, is that and it's really frustrating to me because I have to deal with this every day. But the reality is you have so many different publications out there that say, oh, after 3 bubbles per minute, you need to transfer your beer. That doesn't mean jack shit.
It doesn't mean a damn thing. Yeah.
It doesn't mean anything.
It is an indicator. It's something to go by, but it's in no way absolute. I mean, not even close.
And I mean, those things can bubble for numerous different reasons.
So
temperature change.
I shouldn't set a webcam up to watch my fermenting.
No. Barometric pressure change. All of those different things. Temperature change. Yeah. All of those can affect the way that thing bubbles. So
it's an indicator.
And also one thing I noticed from the post was he said he brews mostly IPAs, and I bought IPAs. I think Bear Republic, Red Racer. You pour that, and there's just hop particles.
There's hop matter in it.
Just floating around. Yeah. And I mean, I've never seen yeast really in suspension unless you're sitting there rolling the bottle or just being reckless when you're pouring it.
Yeah, you're right. That's a good point. It might not be yeast.
Right. Yeah. It could be
something
else.
Maybe just trub in general,
Yeah.
That's a good point, Jeremy. And that, that's one of the things that I think that's a new kind of pioneer, the, new frontier for a lot of people is just learning how to drink bottle conditioned beer because and it's kind of astonishing, really, if you think about it, because for thousands and thousands of years we were doing bottle conditioned beer, and there was sediment in the bottom of beers, and then really in only the last 60, 70 years we don't have sediment in the bottom of our beer, and people are like, "What the hell, man? We got sediment in the." And really, it's been there for millennium. And then all of a sudden, we've got sediment in the beer, and you're like, oh, crap, what's wrong with this beer? It's got shit in the bottom of it.
Well, honestly, it's it's a big reason I don't like bottle-conditioned beers as a general rule.
Right.
There's obviously exceptions to that, but I don't like the fact that I have to be careful about how I pour it. I don't like the fact that you leave a little bit in there and that kind of thing. But that is a reality to bottle-conditioned beer, is you have to treat it differently.
Yeah, but we haven't been doing it that way. We've been doing that way for thousands of years.
Yeah, I wasn't around back then, though.
I've only been drinking beer about 20 years, so
I know I look like
I guarantee you, 20, 30 years ago or 40 years ago, you'd grab you a Lone Star or something like that. That shit would have sediment in the bottom of it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, it's just that's the way it was back then. It was in a bottle too.
Imagine if there wasn't sediment in it, someone would be complaining.
Yeah,
it's like, what the hell is this? This
is too clean. Yeah.
So my answer to this guy on this form, because I did answer it, is one of the things was, really, you can let all of this stuff settle out. You can lager this and cold crash it in the bottle. There's not a problem with having that yeast in there or whatever it is. But if you put some beers in the fridge, once they're carbonated, if you put them in the fridge for a week or two, That stuff will settle out.
That should
Yeah.
clear out.
This, I think, this is just an impatient
Yeah.
new brewer who's trying to
Yeah,
drink
I
his
agree.
beer as
I
quickly
agree.
as possible. And also, I think he's drinking them from the bottle sometimes, which is
Yeah,
a
you
terrible
can't do
idea.
that.
Yeah.
Let's give him the benefit of the doubt.
That is one thing you cannot do as a new brewer is drink from the bottle. You just can't do it.
Well, and really, if you're going to start to be serious about beer, you're missing out.
You don't want to drink from the bottle anyway.
Right, you don't.
even if
You're
it does
missing
have
out
sediment.
on the full experience of that beer if you're not pouring it in a glass.
Correct.
You're
That's why you want to
right.
drink Budweiser.
You're drinking with your nose
from a bottle.
So let's give him the benefit of the idea and call him eager. And
Well,
not impatient.
hey, you guys all know Austin, and he absolutely loves Modelo. He drinks it like a
good reason.
fish, right?
It's wonderful.
He thinks it's the greatest thing since sliced bread.
You'd have thought you'd have
But
trained him
this
better
is
by now.
his drinking beer. But you pour it in a glass for him, he goes, I don't like it in a glass. He wants it out
I
of
don't
the
know
can
if
or the
Austin
bottle.
likes beer.
All the acetyl comes out.
He just doesn't like to. He does not like to drink Modelo out of a bottle.
That's because it tastes weird out of
And
the
to
glass.
be real honest,
He's
with you,
come full circle, is what he's done.
Yeah.
He's evolved and then devolved.
he just doesn't like the.
Are you
And,
saying he's
and
now
you know
a
what though? I have to
knuckle
agree
Yeah, he
with
could
him.
be one of our monkey knife
he
fighters.
could.
I
Actually.
actually have to agree with him
Dibs.
that the Modelo tastes like crap out of a glass, where it tastes good in a can because you can't smell it.
He just needs to
I mean,
switch
really.
over to Miller
but
Lite.
Well.
that's down a rabbit hole. But I'm just saying that there is that basically emphasizes the fact that you learn to get all of those aromas and smells and stuff. You don't want to drink out of a bottle. You don't want to drink out of a bottle, right?
Unless it's Modelo.
Yeah, unless it's or Coors Light or Miller Light,
Right.
or,
You want
or
to
Lone
keep
Star.
all that in
and you want to
case
keep
it-
it cold
Yeah.
as shit.
Yeah.
So you can't
Case
smell the corn or rice.
All right, so let's move on to the next one. The title of this one was "Did Whirlflock Affect My Hydrometer Reading?" And I had to click on this one just based on that one. I thought,
Just off the
wow.
title, I have to say yes and no.
So it says on Sunday I did my first ever all grain beer in a bag brew, or excuse me, brew in a bag brew.
Oh, yeah.
And it was also the first time
it
I
was
used
the Whirlflock,
the
though.
first time I used Whirlflock. I think it went pretty well. I attempted to make Edwards Pale Ale, which should have been an OG of 1054. I transferred to my glass carboy, used a wine thief to steal a sample. It was really cloudy in the tube. My hydrometer was... It was really cloudy in the tube my hydrometer was in, and my OG was 1056. I turned my back on it for a few minutes to pitch my yeast. When I came back to the sample, the wort had really separated with a lot of sediment at the bottom, and the liquid was very clear. My hydrometer reading was now 1060. The temperature of the sample did not change at all during the few minutes that had passed. Was the sediment that settled at the bottom, pushing my hydrometer upwards and throwing off the reading? So I think you've got to understand exactly what it is a hydrometer does to understand what the answer to this question is. And a hydrometer measures the density of the liquid that's in it, and that density is changed by dissolved solids. In our case, those dissolved solids are sugars, and that's what we're trying to measure.
Right.
But anything that's in there that changes the density of that liquid will change the reading. It'll cause the hydrometer to float more or sink more, depending whether it's higher or lower. So my answer to him, so basically it sounded to me like he had a bunch of cold break and trub in this sample.
Yeah.
Seems that way.
And that would lower the density of that liquid.
Yes.
And once that settled out, the density raised, and that's why his hydrometer reading raised. So it's a pretty simple answer here. Make sure you have clear wort in your hydrometer sample tube.
Yeah, and one of the things that yeah, well,
Yeah, you don't want to raise that density too much. You get too dense.
Well, and
Like
that's one of the
Alf.
things that it drives me crazy because I guess because I've been brewing for so long that I really don't get upset about, oh wow, my hydrometer reading is 10 bricks off or 10 specific gravity off or whatever. That really doesn't bother me much.
Well, on that point, I got to disagree with you a little bit. This is a newer brewer. This guy needs
Yeah.
to pay attention to all of his readings. He needs to catalog that and understand what they
that may
are
be
and
the
all that.
case. I mean, I guess I pay more attention to my I pay more attention to my pre-boil gravity, my final gravity, and then I don't really care for them. I really don't worry about it.
Well, this was his original gravity.
Yeah.
A new brewer in particular, but I think everybody needs to know what their original gravity is.
And you know, one of the things that I've run into too is that people don't really understand how to take a gravity reading. And what I mean by that is they don't know there's something called a meniscus. A lot of times people will read the meniscus rather than the actual wort level.
Isn't that in your knee?
Yes.
Yeah, there's actually a meniscus in the wort too.
You have to
and
drill
basically
it
without having a diagram to explain that is you'll see like your hydrometer. If you look at it and you put it in the wort, you'll notice that the beer kind of like tips up, right?
Yeah, it's the surface tension conforming to the edges of the thing.
You don't want
a curved transition instead of a straight 90-degree angle.
A lot of people will read that thing at the meniscus, right, rather than at the level of where the wort is, and so those are things that you need to need to consider too. But they are also, which I think is the dumbest thing ever, most hydrometers are formulated for 60 degrees.
68.
Which, I mean, most people as homebrewers are never going to be dealing with wort at 60 degrees.
And here's the thing about temperature doesn't vary, but he doesn't say what the temperature is.
Here's the thing about that, though, is if you go into some of these apps and programs have the ability you could take your hydrometer reading and you can change the temperature to what it is to know what it is.
Yes.
It doesn't change very much.
No, it doesn't.
If you go from
Unless
60 to
really
90
hot.
degrees, it's less than a point usually.
There's so many different variables though,
Right.
that you can have that cause you to have different. I mean, it could be that you just stirred it up and you got some oxygen, and the bubbles are collecting to the
you want to keep bubbles off of there.
I mean, there's so many different variables, and I guess because I've been brewing so long, I don't really get too hung up on it.
Well, we're using refractometers too.
Well, that's true too. I still use a lot of hydrometers because I think they're a little more accurate. But it's man. Well, if you're within 10 points,
I'm going to take seven words.
It is what it is.
I'm going to take 7 words from the original question and read a lot into it. But he says, my first ever all-grain brew in a bag brew.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, that's a lot of it too.
And I take brew in a bag as BIAB as well. Before you start counting on me. But I take it that he's been an extract brewer. He's been used to taking readings, and he's just moved up to this next step.
Yeah.
And he's confused with what he's seeing compared with his extract sessions.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
See, I think in this case that the Whirlflock actually caused him to get his first correct reading.
Yes.
Because the Whirlflock has coagulated the proteins and that kind of thing and allowed them to drop out. And that final reading you got, that 1060, once everything had collected at the bottom of the sample tube, was clear wort. Now you're getting an accurate reading. If he'd never used Whirlflock before, he still had all that protein and everything in suspension in there.
Right.
And his gravity reading was taking that into account.
Right.
And so he had never probably gotten an accurate hydrometer reading prior to that.
I would agree with that in a lot of ways, but at the same time, I think that he may not even be taking the reading correctly.
Yeah, because
but and the only reason I say that is because if you're pulling a sample,
but
most of that shit's probably going to drop out, at some point.
Well, who knows how he's taking the sample for one thing.
That's true.
But obviously he had a sample tube full of cold break.
He said he's using a thief, so...
Yeah, so... the
only
question,
thing he
did
needs to do-
Whirlflock affect my hydrometer reading? Yes, it did.
He
It
just
made it
needs
more
to use
accurate.
IREX, and then he wouldn't have to worry about it.
Still do a whirlpool. give it a few minutes to settle
Especially if
down.
you're using grandfather. Absolutely.
Yeah.
The protein already be flucked out. So it's all good.
All right, so there we go. Now it's time for Stubby's the tip and just the tip.
Oh, shit. I got a tip tonight?
Yeah.
It says it on here.
Yeah. Stubby doesn't read things.
You don't have it here. It's right there.
Shit, I got
Let
a
me
tip.
show you your tip.
Oh! Boom.
There we go.
I thought we're going to bust out of some red hot chili peppers and shit or something.
Don't bust out anything.
We don't have enough funding for the podcast for that.
Yeah.
All right, your tip.
Chili. Was this
the
not
white
the
hot
same damn
chili
tippy?
paste.
Basically, yes.
Was this not the
just read damn
same?
tip.
This was the same damn tip I had last week, I think.
Well, I don't know. I'm not responsible for this.
Well, why didn't you come up with a different tip?
Chill your tip. Quickly.
It's your tip.
Oh, chill your wart. Sorry. Using a chiller to improve your cold break and reduce the chance of infection prior to pitching. And make sure you use your chill dough.
Very important.
Wow, that was a way. That was a
way
too. That was a 2-year reference.
Anticlimactic.
Yeah.
Sorry, if that was like 2 episodes ago, that would have been.
I have a tip based on my last night's experience, and that is if you're going to be stick welding, do not wear tennis shoes.
Oh, how'd that work out for you?
Ooh, I would have
Burned right through my shoe, through my sock, through my foot. Yeah, I've got.
I would have told you that before you started. But
You know, like in Alien, where they kill the alien and then the blood burns through every layer of the spaceship. Yeah, that's what happened to my foot last night.
I had
burning
when I used to build hot rods, I had a guy that was welding one time, and a big piece of slag. It went right through his shoe, in between his big toe and his his other toe, and it ran. This piece of slag ran all the way underneath the ball of his foot. And it burned the absolute shit out of me. But anyway,
wow.
I was wearing like polyester warm-up pants and
you weren't wearing
sweatpants.
Sweatpants, yeah.
No, they were not sweatpants.
Brandon,
define
you need
polyester
a
warm-up.
safety manager next time you said weld, and I volunteer.
So you was welding and wearing nylon.
See, that's the thing is
Yes.
yeah, nylons. I was
Very
out there
safe.
panty. Oh, but see, you think that's a dig on me, but y'all are stuck with that word picture now, so I feel like I won.
I'm comfortable with it.
Brandon and Frankenfurter.
That worries me.
Yeah, it should do.
Yeah.
He was wearing pantyhose and sweatpants.
All right, so
No sweatpants, just pantyhose.
before we go for a break, let's restore your reputation. Let's go
Oh,
back.
mental pictures are killing me now,
Let's
bro.
go back to recent happenings.
shit, man.
Let's go back to recent happenings just a touch. Brandon, you weren't on the show last week, right?
I was here last week, wasn't I? Well, nobody was here last week.
Nobody was here last week.
Right.
There was no show.
Okay.
We left Brock sitting out
you
in
were
the
the
parking lot.
reason. You were the reason there was not a show here last week. And why was that?
Because he's
Yes, because my grandson was born.
There you go.
Yes,
He's-
thank you.
Congrats,
So,
man.
Yeah.
he's now
Little
Peepaw.
Brandonovich.
Peepaw. I'm Grainpaw, dude.
Your grandpa, is that it?
Peepaw.
So,
Peepaw.
congratulations.
Yeah, let me tell you, that was one of the coolest experiences of my life. I wasn't real happy with my daughter when I found out that she had gotten pregnant, but I am full on grandpa mode now.
Did the
Absolutely.
father hand out cigars?
So you're
No, I didn't, but I went back.
No, did the father hand out cigars?
Oh, the father? No, not at all.
What the?
Well, I mean, I automatically don't like this guy.
I
and
thought
fully
you
support
would bring us cigars tonight, dude.
I'll bring cigars anytime you want. I didn't. Yeah.
Do you have?
I went back home after the kid was born and drank an entire bottle of champagne and smoked a cigar in my backyard and looked at pictures and wept like a little baby. Does that?
Yeah, it's basically the same
Kinda
thing.
qualifies.
It's better than
So-
smoking a pole.
Do you have a? Do you have
Another
a
tip
beer?
from Stubby.
Do you have a beer scheduled for the first birthday?
I don't. That's a good idea.
It
It's
is.
a good idea.
Barley
Yeah.
wines, maybe?
Yeah, barley wine or a Russian Imperial Stout or something like that would be
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
Tears
Actually,
of an angel.
Brooklyn Brewing released their Monster
10,000
Ale clone
angels
once they discontinued it, and I brewed it before. It's great. That would be a good one
Yeah.
to brew, and then open up on his first, second, third
Yeah.
birthday.
Baby's
No,
name?
no
Right.
further than that.
As long as I
Jacob.
get invited.
Jacob.
Jacob, good name.
That's a good solid
Jingle
name right
Hire. Jingleheimer is his middle name.
Jingleheimer Schmidt. Yeah.
there. Weird.
What a coincidence!
All right, so
congratulations, man. And,
thank you. I appreciate it.
Congratulations to the daughter as well.
Yes, she did really well.
Did she have any part of this?
You know, it's amazing. I swear to God, I've seen that face. I saw the picture of the kid.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, holy shit, that's Brandon after the quad episode.
That's about right. Yeah. All right, so we're going to take a break now. When we come back, we're going to have a coupon code for y'all. So make sure you come back and join us after the break. After the many-colored death melts your face. Yeah. Come back here. We'll have a coupon code, and we're going to talk about Pilsners.
Pils.
Yeah.
Not the can you pop.
Pils World.
What?
Pils World.
Nothing says loving like me in your oven.